Hello and welcome to the Political Fight Back Begins. Today's date is Friday, the 27th of March 2026, the year of serious politics. And the way we win is we get Great Britain on the blockchain because all legal and political influence stem from economic power. Right, let's cue the intro.
We have before us the opportunity to forge a new world order.
We will be looking at what contact tracing looks like in the new world order.
Not only fight for Ukraine, we fight for this new world order.
And the leader of the opposition and the deep state.
This is exactly what this government wants. It's communism 101.
For the new world order.
There we go, and I have with me back again today David C. Carter after our fantastic discussion we had yesterday. So we're going to start off where we left off, which was talking about the benefits of finally the world having an immutable digital record ledger, and how this could be used to bring to light all the fraud and corruption that is happening in the world right now. And we say it's a world because this is a worldwide ledger that can literally absorb all the world's internet traffic. So with it being private, there's no excuse for everyone not to use it. And with it being provable and transparent, again, that's another reason for everybody to use it. So David, thank you very much for coming back on the show. I thought this time we would be able to go over some of the questions because you seemed quite captivated by what I was saying and how the world's first ever immutable ledger could actually be used to call and point out all the corruption. So do you have any questions that we could start off with?
Not really. I think, first of all, thank you for asking me to come back again today. I've been invited back onto a few podcasts over the last year or so, but never the next day. So that's the first.
There we go.
You need to explain to me how everything on this platform, this system, it can at the same time be both private and transparent?
Yeah, because the only thing that you see on the ledger, or the system as you call it, is just simply a legacy address. And that's it. All you see is one transaction from one legacy address going to another legacy address. But the individuals behind that transaction know that they did it. And if they wanted to prove that they did it, because there is a digital signature on that transaction, and they can then testify and witnesses say, yep, this is the transaction that I made, this is when I made it, this is the wallet that I made it from, here is the transaction ID, and then that living man and woman behind that can then say, look, I'm a witness that I sent this to this individual. So you can't actually see anything on the ledger. All you see is data movements between legacy addresses. But if somebody wants to prove that it was them, they can come forward and say, I made this transaction and this is how I prove it. So there is an immutable digital record. So for example, if government orders were being dished out, or if somebody said something, or money was being sent here, there, or everywhere, you could ask, who made that transaction? Who did that? And you could eventually find a wallet and trace that back through literally going door to door, saying, oh, you're the living man or woman behind this transaction. Can you please tell us who you sent that to? And then it's up to the discretion of the individual to say, actually, I sent this to them. And you say, all right, thank you very much. Then you go to them and say, look, you made this transaction to this legacy address. Can you tell us who you sent that to? Because we're trying to track, activities related to gun running, child trafficking, drug dealing. Please, will you help us stamp out this transaction? And the uploaded data can also be, for example, court orders. So then you would say, well, who made that court order? Because there's no judge's signature on that. And was this judge standing in his own court? Was there a jury there? Or is this an administration process to which he has no authority whatsoever? And maybe he was acting in maritime law, which is against common law, which is high treason. So it's public because anybody can access it via Bitcoin. So you simply pay for the upload with Bitcoin. It's private because all anybody sees is a legacy address. But if you want to prove that transaction was made or find somebody on it, you can just simply start asking questions. Who made this? Who's making this claim? Because if somebody is saying that something happened, or if somebody tries to frame somebody and they can say, look, I wasn't there, I didn't do it, and I can prove I didn't do it because this is the transaction that I made on this particular date to this particular individual, and I have witnesses to prove that I was in this location when I did it, so therefore I wasn't there.
Okay, that sounds to me like if someone's accused of fraud, they can say, no, I didn't, and I've got the receipts to prove I didn't, sort of thing.
Absolutely.
Right, but I'm not sure how two private legacy addresses and some data that moves between those two addresses, how is that transparent in the sense of one address is you, the other's me, we're doing something we shouldn't be doing, and I transfer some money to you or you transfer some money to me or whatever in exchange for some data or information, but no one knows it's you or it's me or what it is we transferred or why we transferred the money. So I'm not sure how that's prevented the fraud that you and I have got up to being spotted and auditable and stoppable.
Well, the crime that we are committing would have to be worth the effort involved to track it down. So if we were just acting in the private and it didn't have any negative effect on society or the wider public at large, and it was just simply a private transaction between me and you, whose business is it? It's only going to be tracking people who are actually having a negative effect on society where it's going to be worth tracking them down. So what you would do is you would find a wallet eventually that you knew the living man or woman behind it and say, look, we need to trace this chain of signatures back to find who the living men and women are behind this particular transaction that looks like it's involved in, X, Y, Z. So it would take time. It would take a lot of resources. So therefore, the crime being committed has to be worth the economic resources and the time putting in to track it down. But the fact is, the evidence is immutable. So therefore, you have a lot of time to find out who it is that did it, and they can't deny it.
I don't know this area well enough, but I understand that almost any significant procurement by any branch of government has to be posted onto some website. And that's how Charlotte Gill and the procurement files and all those other Doge UK equivalents find out about all the money that's been wasted and been committed to that was never voted on or in a manifesto. And I think one of the criticisms by those various people is that insufficient details are put of, who the contract's in favor of and who the shareholders of that are and if there's any conflicts of interest or whatever. But it would be pretty simple to enhance what is a half attempt at a transparent system into a fully transparent system. And so before the money's spent, if that project was put on this website and the shareholders and the conflicts of interest or potential conflicts of interest were aired, then those contracts could be stopped before they were even implemented. Whereas what you're suggesting is if someone's got enough money and they can be asked, then they can chase this up afterwards. But if it's been a fraud and ultimately the money's ended up in the Cayman Islands and somewhere else behind a foundation, behind a who's ever going to have the money to do that investigative journalism after that they've been defrauded? Whereas surely there are ways to make all of these government contracts and things transparent before they are executed or enacted.
Oh, yeah. So
the transparency of that revised system would prevent fraud, because people say, oh, well, we're going to get found out if we get involved in that.
Oh, yeah. So all these government contracts and everything like that, they would be made public on the ledger. So everybody could scrutinize them before they were actually put into place. So anything that's on the ledger can be shared publicly, but it can also remain private if you want it to be private. So literally all the government's activities should go on this ledger. Emails, communications, contracts, everything, because they can be private, but then they can be proved, but they can also be made public, so they can be seen. But the fact is, whatever goes on the ledger can't be deleted.
Okay, so the advantage of your system is that the data can't be deleted. So I know in lots and lots of areas now, we have these Freedom of Information Act requests for contracts and emails and all the rest of it. And if the FOIA request is successful, then often, the person requesting it gets heavily redacted files with obvious bits missing, which they're then told, oh, that's too commercially sensitive or whatever. But if at the end of the day, that ability to redact and the claim of commercial confidentiality was removed, there is a system in place already whereby that data could be made available to the public before a contract was entered into.
Yeah, all of that. This is just simply a way of making sure that data can't be deleted. So in other words, information can't go missing. So for example, if you put your paperwork into a court and you have and you put scanned pictures and whatever it is, and you put them up onto the Bitcoin ledger, and then the court says, "Oh, we've lost your files." We can say, "Well, that's all right. Here's the evidence that I actually sent them to you on this particular date, and I have this is what I sent you, and I can prove it because the hash number on the data file matches the hash number that's on the ledger, which proves the date and time that I sent it, and that these documents are authentic."
Okay, so one of the questions I think I had last night after we chatted yesterday was essentially the system that you're proposing is a replacement for money as we know it. Is that correct?
Oh, well, it's a replacement for money and the internet.
Okay, but let's stick with the money to start off with. Is the system that you're proposing already up and running?
Yeah.
So why hasn't it been adopted so far?
Because people have been told that blockchain cannot scale. And the reason they've been told that is because the skullduggery that went on at the beginning with Hal Finney putting a 1 megabyte block cap in place, and Satoshi Nakamoto not being able to reveal himself until the Tulip Trust was returned to him on the 1st of January 2020. And he's the only one that really actually knows how to scale this technology because he's the one that created it. And the banks obviously don't want this technology to be used because it will expose their entire criminal network, and people might start using a financial system outside of their central banking system. So even though this technology is out there, very, very few people know it or understand it, and therefore they're not looking at it. Whereas as soon as this utility is recognized, and let's say if there was a network that did 3 million transactions per second and can deal with transaction sizes up to 20 megabytes, suddenly people can't say, oh, that didn't happen, because the proof is on the blockchain that it did. There is 3 million transactions there within a second, bearing in mind that Visa and MasterCard can only process up to 50 to 60,000 transactions per second. This is scaled by a huge magnitude, so it can actually scale. And then when people are just like, well, actually, so that means I can use this network instead of having to employ the likes of Amazon Web Services or Microsoft Cloud. Well, that's going to save me a small fortune, especially if it's pay as you go. And that means I don't actually have to have my own server network. So I can pretty much run my multinational business on this ledger. Well, that's great, because then I also don't have to worry about information being cracked, hacked, altered, changed, or deleted, and it's not susceptible to cybersecurity acts or virus software. This is great. How do I use it? Oh, so I need to buy Bitcoin in order to make a payment for my digital information up onto the network. So I buy Bitcoin to use the network to save myself millions, if not billions of dollars on data efficiencies and data securities, and at the same time it's fixed in supply and going up in value. Well, that's amazing. I'll buy as much as I can.
So why have MasterCard or Visa, with obviously hundreds of millions or even billions of benefit, not bitten someone's arm off to adopt this already?
Well, exactly. That's exactly what they should have done. But this proves that the financial industry is not what it appears to be. So in other words, what they want is they want control of your finances. They want to be the gatekeepers. Because if Visa and MasterCard started using the Bitcoin network for their digital requirements, there's no stopping or blocking transactions.
Right. So they wouldn't save money for very long, because customers would figure out that they don't need MasterCard or Visa to send money from place A to place B at a fraction of the cost that their bank or Visa or MasterCard charge them now.
There is that, yeah.
So the reason they haven't adopted it is because it would cannibalize their own business model.
Yeah, but that means that a new startup who sees that there is still value in fiat credit, saying, oh, well, actually, we can actually start a credit card company, but instead of running this credit card company on our own servers or using Amazon Web Services or Microsoft Cloud, we can still provide the same digital service at literally a fraction of the cost. Well, this is great. This means that we'll just simply charge shopkeepers 0.02% instead of, 3, 4, or 5%. We can still provide them credit in a digital form.
Why do you think no one's done that yet?
Because they don't know that the technology can scale. The scaling technology, as in like the one that's going to absorb all the world's internet traffic, was literally just finished last year, which was Teranode. So a Teranode is a node that can process terabytes of data. And whereas before, when Satoshi Nakamoto created the Bitcoin network, it was only really designed for very, very small amounts of data in a transaction, because each transaction was queued up behind one another, so it was effectively in single file. Whereas now they have what they call a subtree structure, where rather than having data going in the block in single file, it's now recorded in multiple streams and then recorded in a block. So there are subtrees recording information being uploaded at multiple times, almost like at the same time. So, yeah, I suppose the best. Think of a piece of string, rather than having all transactions on a single string. Now, sort of turn that string into like a branch structure, where you have subtrees that are also recording transactions at the same time. So rather than having a single file of data being uploaded, you can now have multiple bits of data being uploaded at the same time.
There's a parallel between your project and my project, in that essentially what we're saying is old system bad, new system needed. Here's the new system. And we realize we're going to get lots of resistance from the establishment, the blob, the machine, as I call it. And in a way, you're saying old money bad, new money good. and you're going to get lots of resistance from the old money cabal to the implementation of your new platform as well.
Yeah. But people will be economically incentivized to join this new platform because the data efficiencies and data securities are on a completely new level, because blockchain technology links data together via hash numbers, which means it can't be deleted and it's not susceptible to cybersecurity hacks or virus software, as it would be if it was on a centralized server, which is your central point of a failure and an attack. And not only that, you're effectively using the network for free because you'd be using it with equity that's been gathered in the token that you purchased, because the token is fixed in supply and therefore increasing in value, and therefore it costs you less and less to use the network and put a transaction on it.
If we take the UK, where we've got I think it's approximately, in big round numbers, 40 million people of working age, of whom about 31 million are at work. So there's 9 million people of working age who aren't at work, and very roughly half and half of that 9 million is made up of 4.5 million people who aren't on benefits. They've sold their business, saved money, sold their house, or done whatever, and they don't need to work, and so they choose not to work. But there's about the same number of people who are on benefits. And then so that leaves, if I remember the numbers correctly, there's 15 million people in the UK who work for an SME with less than 5 people in it. Lots of solopreneurs, husband and wife teams, 2 chaps form a plumbing business, but and then you've got the salaried employees of medium and large size companies. So where in that system would you see the early adopters of this coming from?
So the cabal have their claws in the top. So in other words, all the blue chip companies at the top that have the majority of the market, they have their claws in, and they can then dictate the market. Bitcoin infiltrates from the bottom up, because it's going to be all the small enterprises that are looking for an economic advantage in some way to reduce their overheads and increase their profits. So rather than using Amazon Web Services or Microsoft Cloud or having their own server network, now they can use the Bitcoin network, which is 1 million times more efficient, and not only efficient in terms of cost saving. The actual cost of using it is reduced by multiple factors, because it's pay as you go rather than a monthly subscription, and the cost of uploading is literally sort of a micro payment. Then if that small company has shareholders and they're wanting to increase their profits to therefore increase their dividend, well, they would be all over this technology, because they would be using it to cut their costs, cut their overheads from Amazon Web Services, Microsoft Cloud, their own server network, and at the same time they're then dealing in a monetary asset that's increasing in value. So they would be all over this, and the efficiencies that the network provides them means that they could probably very quickly start chomping away at market share at the blue chip companies. So therefore, the blue chip companies are going to have to start adopting this network in order to keep up with the economic efficiencies and advantages that it's providing to these small companies that are now rapidly growing.
You're not old enough to understand this story, but I was working in about 1979 in Saudi Arabia. I worked there for 17 months. And socially, I got to meet a chap who was the head of cable and wireless's operations in Saudi Arabia. And he called me up one day and said, "Oh, you've got to come to my office and come see this amazing thing we've developed. And we're launching, and you can be my first customer in Saudi Arabia." and it was a fax machine. Do you know what a fax machine is?
Yeah, of course I do. I'm not that old. Also, I'm not that young.
But anyway, I remember, and one of the things that the bank that I worked for had to do was send tested telexes to send money from one country to another and one bank to another. And we were trying to figure out how this fax technology could speed that up, make it cheaper, more secure. But I remember saying to him that if I go to my boss and ask to get one of these, his number one question is, well, how many other people that we'd ever want to deal with have got one? And so until there's at least 100 people that we want to deal with who've got one, why don't we wait till then? So you're not going to come across that same mindset that lots of people at the bottom, as you say, will go, oh, this is a good idea. But unless I can do my weekly shopping wherever I normally shop and they'll accept Bitcoin, or I can go to the baker's or the coffee shop and buy a coffee and they accept it, until enough people accept it, it will be a very limited number of transactions that they can transact in. And so is it not a case, and I'm never sure how to create that momentum from the bottom up. But are you not going to face the same kind of problem?
No, because the supply is fixed. So because the supply is fixed, people can't create any more. So if demand...
Sorry, I think you're missing the point of my question. You're trying to sell me the benefit of the 21 million cap. I'm just trying to say to you, regardless of the benefits, including that, until I know that there's enough people I can trade with using this new technology, I'm going to wait until there's lots more people on the system. It's like, what's the point of being the first person on LinkedIn? You need there to be 1,000 people on LinkedIn before it's worth joining to then get the benefits of it.
Well, yeah, so this is where the value proposition comes in. Rather than having to transact it with somebody, your business can start using the network immediately for all of your digital requirements. All you need is to have Bitcoin in your possession so that you can make a micropayment in Bitcoin to upload any digital information that you need to the network, to store it on there. So rather than using Amazon Web Services or Microsoft Cloud, if you've suddenly like, oh, hold on a minute, there's somebody over here who's uploading vast quantities of information onto the Bitcoin ledger where it's not susceptible to cybersecurity or virus software, and the price of the coin seems to be going up because other people are getting in on this as well. Oh, actually, right, we just better buy some now quickly. And then people are just like, hold on a minute, why is the price going up? Why are people buying this? Oh, so I can actually use the network for all of my digital requirements to save myself millions, if not billions of dollars. Well, that's great. I better buy some now as well.
Okay, sorry to push back on you, but if my numbers are correct, there's 15 million people in the UK work for 9 million businesses that employ less than 5 people. What are the services that they could use this platform for at a much lower cost than whatever it is they're doing now to get the same benefit?
Data storage and data records, private communications, emails where they can't be deleted. So you can actually have messages, private messages, one-to-one, where you have a record of the conversation. So therefore, if something ever goes wrong in the future, or if somebody breaches the agreement, you can actually go back and say, well, actually, this is the email that we said, this is what we agreed. And if you're now disputing that, well, I've got the immutable evidence here to prove that you're lying, and therefore we'll take it to court and sue you.
Can't you do all that now already using the legacy systems?
No, because the legacy systems can just simply be deleted. And like a digital, anything that's digital at the moment is just simply is held on servers where the information is sort of etched into silicon using lasers, and that silicon can just be rewritten. And therefore, the data can be deleted. It can also be hacked.
Okay, hang on a sec. The average small business, 1, 2, 3 man business, which is what the average is, all the tradesmen, all those small business owners, I'm not convinced that they've got, I think my iCloud subscription is like £2.99 a month.
Yeah.
And so if you can make it 99p a month, it's like, is it really worth the time and effort to save £2 a month?
Yeah, but this is an individual. I mean, we're talking literally cheaper by if you're a company spending millions. But the fact is, even if you're
you did say just now that this is a bottom up, and so I'm trying to figure out, in the 30 odd million people who go to work every day in this country, which is your target audience, who do you start off with? And you said it's probably the small businesses because they've got the most to gain, and the big companies are already tied up by the cabal. So I was trying to think about what the opportunity is with those small businesses, where they will go, wow, this is doing something I couldn't do before, or doing it a lot cheaper, and I do a lot of it, and therefore I'm benefiting from a big cost saving. I'm trying to figure out what the use case is.
Well, the use case here is mainly the fact that they're not relying on Microsoft Cloud. Because, if they were, for example, to have a political opinion, and Microsoft Cloud said, oh, right, well, we're now denying you our services, or deleting your profiles, or you're not going to have this information anymore, or it just simply gets hacked, then if your information could also be exposed, and they've also holding the key to it. Whereas if you're using the Bitcoin network, you're using it privately, and data can't be deleted. So you effectively own and control all that you use it for. So your business is now private. Your business is not dependent on Microsoft Cloud or Amazon Web Services.
So how do I send someone an email using this platform?
So, for example, the easiest example of sending a message is with a wallet called Handcash. With Handcash, I can send a payment to you, and I can also send a message to you. With that payment, there is a social media site called Tree Chat that allows you to post social media posts and contact people. But all of these services that you're saying are literally about to get built on the Bitcoin network, so it can be used for everything. Because literally prior to last year, the network couldn't scale to accommodate all of this. So it's literally about to explode.
So will Word and Excel and PowerPoint and things like that, will they eventually have a Bitcoin version?
We already have that. It's called Boogle. So in other words, Bitcoin Google. So yeah, Excel, Word, spreadsheets, search engines. It's already been built.
Right. So I think, and from conversations I've had, particularly with small business owners, who are all struggling at the moment, this increase in the national insurance threshold, and it's very difficult to recruit people, to let people go. There's business rates. A lot of small businesses are struggling. And so I think the use case for them has got to be, this could make your life much easier and less paperwork and less bureaucracy and cheaper.
Absolutely. And also, Bitcoin is outside of the jurisdiction of any financial regulator because it's a commodity. So in other words, the FCA or the SEC, they have no right to say you need to pay taxes, because they have no jurisdiction over your private property, which is Bitcoin. And tax is voluntary, and that can be proved because there's no law saying that tax is compulsory. So therefore, you could genuinely send an affidavit to HMRC or the financial regulator and say, you're telling me that I owe tax. Please point out to me the law that says that tax is compulsory. Because until you prove that tax is compulsory, I'm going to assume that it's voluntary. And because I don't like the way you're behaving, and I think that you're acting in high treason, I'm going to withdraw my voluntary donation.
Well, there are plenty of people behind bars who've not paid tax, and they've ended up spending time at His Majesty's pleasure.
Well,
So
that's probably because they've signed a tax return. There's nobody that's ever served time for not signing a tax return. It's your signature that creates joinder, that enables them to say, "Oh, right, well, we feel as though you owe us this, and you've not been honest."
how do we get? How does the transition happen in the UK, in Europe, in the Americas? I'm trying to think. I don't know much about it, but El Salvador, was an example I was thinking of this morning before this call, where they had an old system that was completely corrupt and broken, and Bukele came in and within 5 years has turned it around, cleaned it up, sorted it out with a completely new system. And I think El Salvador has allowed Bitcoin to be bought and sold and transacted in freely with no control by the El Salvadorian government. Is that correct?
Yes, but it wasn't actually Bitcoin. It was BTC. So BTC is an alternative protocol created by the deep state that they manufactured the BTC ticker onto. So they thought they were using Bitcoin, but they were actually being deceived into using an altcoin.
Oh, so when we've been talking yesterday and today about Bitcoin, I was assuming that we were talking about BTC because that's what everybody thinks of as Bitcoin.
There is that, but here's the problem I've got. If I have some gold and then I have some tin and I paint that tin gold, do I refer to it as tin or gold because everybody else calls it gold and they think it's gold because it's been painted gold? Or do I refer to it as tin that's been painted in gold? So BTC is an alternative protocol that people refer to as Bitcoin.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the deception that the banking cabal have performed on everybody, and hence they say, "Oh, can't scale, not many use it, digital gold, store of value," whereas Bitcoin is a peer-to-peer electronic cash system by definition.
So you accept the point I've made, which is probably 99.9% of the population of the planet, if they hear the word Bitcoin, and look, BTC's gone up 10%, down 10%, whatever, most people would assume that BTC is what people are talking about, but you're talking about another Bitcoin, not the one that is called BTC and everyone thinks is Bitcoin, correct?
Well, I'm talking about the original protocol that is still the same as it was when it started in 2009, but it's had a change of market ticker symbol to identify it. So in other words, it's now identified with the ticker symbol BSV.
What does BSV stand for?
Stands for Bitcoin Satoshi Vision.
So, and still 21 million coins?
The protocol is literally exactly as it was when it started, and it has never changed. It even still uses the #1 legacy address, which was assigned to all genuine Bitcoin transactions. And that's one of the reasons why it's genuine, because BTC now no longer uses the number 1. It mainly uses legacy addresses beginning with number 3 or the letters BC, which indicates that the digital protocol has changed or been tampered with.
So, all right. So there is BSV, which you're saying is the original one, and someone kind of hijacked it or hived a bit off and then took the BTC symbol, ticker tape symbol with it. But that is a different protocol to the original Bitcoin BSV. But how come that other one, the BTC one, has taken off like a rocket and BSV has been left behind?
Because the banking cabal, the only way they can, because they can't buy the genuine Bitcoin, because if they did, that would indicate market interest, and then other people might start buying it, which would then start, the price going up, which would then create price discovery, and people would discover what you could use it for. So what they've done is they created an alternative protocol that they slapped the BTC ticker on, and then they just simply pumped its price via fraudulent means through what they call a stable coin called Tether. And Tether is just simply a cryptocurrency that is meant to be pegged one-to-one to the US dollar, but it's never been audited. And they just produce copious amounts of that in order to purchase BTC and then pump its price. So there's no utility behind it. It's purely number go up. And in that case, when there's no demand behind it, what goes up must come down.
Sorry, can you explain that last couple of sentences in real layman's simple terms? So Tether is a different entity to BTC altogether, yes?
Yeah. And the reason it's called Tether is because it's meant to be tethered to the US dollar. So in other words, every one Tether, which is a crypto, is meant to be backed by a US dollar in their bank account. So you would give them $1 and they would give you a Tether in return for that.
Why would anyone buy a Tether if they had $1 in the bank?
Because they can cash out of a cryptocurrency into Tether, and then maintain their profits because Tether is a stable coin. And then if they wanted to convert that Tether back into US dollar. But the issue is in the same way that the US government or the Federal Reserve print US dollar from nothing, Tether can also be created from nothing. And that's what they've been doing. So it's the same trick, but in the crypto market. And this one fiat currency crypto has been used to manipulate the entire crypto market and pump BTC up to $120,000.
So can you explain to me, and I'm sorry, I don't know anything about this, but you said Tether is a stable coin.
Yeah, so Tether is meant to represent fiat currency, particularly the US dollar. So that's all it is. If you have,
but is it a cryptocurrency?
Yeah, it's what they call an ERC20 token. So in other words, it's just simply a token that is created on top of a coin, a digital coin. So in other words, it piggybacks on the back of a crypto coin, a cryptocurrency, and is used to transfer information that is meant to represent $1 US.
Well, that's all above my pay grade. That all just sounds like gambling to me.
Well, if you, for example, that this is what the crypto market has turned into, because you can't use it for anything because none of the networks can scale. But if you tell somebody a porky pie or a good story and people go, oh, that sounds really good, and then the price of this crypto starts going up because everybody gets excited about the story they've been told, and then people think, oh right, well the price has actually gone quite high now. I might, cash that into Tether to lock in my gains. That's what they use it for. So if let's say if you buy gold for £2,000, and it's gone up to £5,000, and therefore you want to what they call cash in on that, you would then sell at £5,000 for US dollars, and you would then have that value realized.
Well, I'm not sure what I mean, if I bought gold for £2,000 and I sold it for £5,000 a few years later, after I've sold it, why don't they just send me the money back to my bank account that I paid them in the first place with? I'm not sure the role of Tether.
So Tether does exactly that, but with the cryptocurrency market. So rather than you can't buy gold on the cryptocurrency market, but you can buy cryptocurrency. So somebody would buy cryptocurrency with Tether.
All right. So Tether's like a broker. You bought some of this cryptocurrency and it's gone up, Ethereum or whatever. It's gone up in value, doubled in value. Now you want to sell it and get it back into US dollars, and they do that transaction and conversion for you.
Yeah. So first of all, you would do the immediate transfer into Tether to lock in your gains, and then if you wanted to, convert Tether back into fiat currency.
And what's the link between Tether and BTC that you're suspicious about?
Well, in the same way that the banking cabal manipulate the stock markets by printing fiat currency from nothing and pumping it into markets, Tether does the same thing with the crypto market. You just create Tether from nothing to create fake demand, buy a cryptocurrency with it. The cryptocurrency goes up in value, and then you convert back into Tether again.
I know you live and breathe this all day, every day, but I'm just not convinced that the ordinary person, where you feel you want to start off getting adoption, is going to think, oh, this is so complicated. And by the way, given that I bank with Barclays or Lloyds or Santander or HSBC or whatever, the word on the street and down the pub and in the hospital where I work is that if you try and buy any cryptocurrency via a high street bank, they close your account.
Yeah, there is that. So what it means is that when utility is first recognized, for example, on the BSV network, where people have been told the blockchain can't scale and is not many use it, store of value, digital gold, but then suddenly millions of transactions per second come on the BSV network, and each transaction carries with it a small micropayment. But because there are so many transactions on the network, the block fee goes to millions of dollars. It's all those people who are already in the crypto market that will jump in feet first. And the crypto market currently has a market cap of $2.3 trillion. And that $2.3 trillion has nowhere to go but into BSV.
Okay, so it's not the small business owner, entrepreneur, bottom up. It's people in the crypto market today. And by that, I presume you mean the crypto miners, who are going to say, oh, well, we get a lot more money for doing the same hour of work over there than we get from where we've been working before.
Yeah, so it will be the miners and the traders. So all those people who trade it, they're suddenly going to be, oh, right, well, we've been told this story that Bitcoin could be the new money. Well, I'll take a punt on that. But so far that hasn't come to fruition because, as I've just described, they've been told a lie about what Bitcoin truly is and how it's used. Whereas once this lie, this facade falls, and people suddenly see that, oh, so BSV is the original protocol that goes back to the Genesis block, and that can actually scale to do millions of transactions per second, meaning all the world can use it for all of their digital requirements. Oh, crikey, let's get in there. That's what will make the number go up. And when the number goes up, people then start hearing about it because other people are talking about it, questioning why the value has gone up. And then when the value goes up, people are saying, all right, well, what is this thing? What can it be used for? Oh, so I can actually use this for all of my own digital requirements for my own business. I didn't know that. That's never been done before.
All right, I've got two questions based on that reply. The first question is, from the launch of Bitcoin through to the hijacking, as I call it, and it being branched off and the ticker stolen, at that point where it diverged, I'm trying to figure out, let's say of the 21 million Bitcoins, 10 million had been issued by then. Do the people who were involved before the hijack, have they ended up with 10 million BSV and 10 million BTC? So they've actually double dipping and betting on in both.
Correct.
And so did everyone who had Bitcoin BSV, when it got hijacked, did they get the same number of BTC as they had BSV before?
Yes.
And kept their BSV?
Yes.
But if I buy a BSV today, I don't get any share of a BTC.
Correct.
And if I buy a BTC today, I don't get any share of a BSV.
Correct.
Okay, so if what BSV is now trying to do, now this Terra node has been built, which enables all of this mass scaling that everyone says it can't do, have you not got to just find a way to get 1 million transactions in 30 seconds and prove that it works?
So it's already been proved to work on what they call the Terra node test net. So in other words, the test net is a replica of the original Bitcoin chain that they just simply used to test the volume of transactions on. And so now they have that software on the original Bitcoin chain. We are just simply waiting for these small to medium-sized enterprises which have been working in the background on implementing it into their systems to launch on it.
When's that likely to happen?
2026.
It's very interesting, and I won't tell you the whole long story because it would take far too long. But about 12 years ago, someone who I ended up doing a deal with, in fact, he joined the board of this company I was with, he manages billions and billions for a very well-known asset manager. But he had been, and he was in his early 60s, but he'd been a student of booms and busts throughout history, and he had all sorts of charts and things, and he said to me, there's this trend and that chart and this period, and he said to me, this was 12 years ago, and of course it's all going to go upside down and back to front in 2026. And over the next 3 or 4 years that I was still on the same board as him, he said, remember to prepare for 2026. And then probably about 7 years ago, when I turned 60, I had a session with a numerologist, and basically she said to me, you want to get all your house in order and financials and everything before the beginning of 2026, because 2026 is going to be, you know, a big shake-up in the global markets. And about 2 years ago, maybe 3 years ago, I went to a very interesting, it was a family office sponsored, very private meeting, but it was all about how the global fiat Ponzi scheme had to blow up eventually, and it was going to blow up in 2026. And I kept thinking, literally over a 12-year period, all these different things have arisen. There's probably one or two others I've forgotten about, but they're the big ones. And now you're saying it's all going to happen in 2026. So,
yeah.
And by the way, there are a couple of people who I follow on the internet who very recently have been talking about everything that's going on in Iran and Venezuela and what have you, and are basically saying their thesis is it's the end of the globalist fiat cabal stranglehold on world finances, and that's going to end, and a new world order in a multipolar world is going to replace it in 2026. So
that
exciting.
Probably, it ties into Alice Bailey's prophecy of the return of the Christ consciousness in 2026, which all the Masonic order are aware of.
Oh, I don't know anything about that.
I'll send you the information on it. She's the one that predicted this 2026 awakening of mass consciousness.
Well, that would be good if we got that.
Yeah.
Wouldn't it?
Well, this has been a fantastic conversation. We'll be going for 58 minutes. Probably a good time to wrap it up. If you've got maybe one more question or any statements you'd like to make.
No, thank you. We've talked all about this platform today. I've learned a lot, as always, when I chat to you, and I'm sure I'll have some follow-up questions that I can ping you, over the next week or so. But I hope my questions have been helpful for you to be able to explain to a lay person and a lay audience how this all works. And I think I was most fascinated with the fact that before the split or after the split, people who had BSV ended up with BTC as well. And so presumably they're the ones who know, if like, the fraud that they perpetrated. And surely they will be the ones who want to migrate over to BSV because they've already got it, once they know that the fraud has been found out in BTC?
Yeah. So the alteration in the Bitcoin protocol, they were told was an upgrade. So that's the deception. They were told, oh, we're going to change this, but it's an upgrade and it's going to improve it. And then when they started pumping the price with Tether, people just accepted that what they were saying was true.
Right, but they've still got the same number of BSV that they had originally.
Yeah.
Which, if BSV then replaces BTC and goes up in value, as you're suggesting, then they actually won't lose any money at all. Yeah. It's only the people who bought BTC after the hijack that haven't got a hedge because they've got the same number of BSV. They're the ones who are going to get punished the most.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Right. My brain's exploding with all this now. Thank you very much indeed.
Right, it's been a pleasure, David. I'll just play the outro and then we can chat a little bit afterwards. Hope you all enjoyed it, everybody. We'll see you soon.
My main interest in all this is to preserve our democratic institutions. I want to retain the right to vote, the right to speak freely, and the right to write. If we maintain these basic principles, our democracy is safe. No dictatorship can exist with suffrage, freedom of speech and press.